Manuel in San Diego. Manuel, how are you doing today?
I'm doing fine. I just had a question. I'm a former Catholic. I'm an atheist now, but
Man,
growing up Catholic.
Catholics coming in tonight. What's up? Okay, anyway, continue.
Okay, so growing up Catholic, there really wasn't an issue with alcohol, with people drinking alcohol, beer, wine, or whatever. And I know it says in the Bible somewhere that there was a story about Jesus at a wedding and they ran out. Now, at that point,
I think Luke.
Yes.
Jesus, Luke. But at that point,
John, actually. I think
John.
it's John.
Yeah.
Yep. Anyway, continue.
Whatever.
So at that point, Jesus in the story didn't say, stop. You had enough. Everybody's fine and be temperate and all that other stuff. He actually made more. Correct?
Yes.
Yes.
So my question is, why do some Christian religions don't allow alcohol if in the story they ran out and it should be supposedly, hey, be temperate and that's enough?
Yeah.
Jesus actually went and said, let's make more for everybody.
So, interesting question. First, there's a couple different things I would think of for this. I think Matthew also has a response here, but one, we should definitely be super clear that the kind of alcohol that they were drinking in that day was very different. We're not talking about Austin. We're not talking about Austin IPAs here. Okay, we're not talking about vodka. We're talking about they were fermented very differently, and it wouldn't be quite as effective in how we would get drunk today versus how they would do it then, and also the fermentation process of what they used was a cleanser for some of their water and stuff back then. They would it would the water
make the water safe to drink.
Yeah, it would be safer to drink as far as because that's what alcohol does. It kills germs and stuff in there, and so like there's a long historical precedent for cultures doing that. That's answer number one. Okay, the second thing is. The Christian church also, I mean, as we're talking about Catholics especially, has a history of developing alcohol. In fact, if you go to these old monasteries and stuff, tons of them have all kinds of beer. And they are basically these breweries out there because they practice making, this craft of different kinds of alcohol. So it is interesting to see that there's different movements in that. The temperance movement is a movement kind of, I believe, early 20th century that really is a lot more modern than what people think.
Yes.
And so the temperance movement was kind of this idea of seeing alcohol as harmful because, again, it's talking about the modern effects of alcohol because you couldn't go to a bar in Jerusalem necessarily. It wasn't the way that they structured that stuff wasn't the same thing. Now, did they sell alcohol in public places? Absolutely. But they didn't have the same kind of social connections I think that we do now. And the access to that was kind of different too. So, I mean, again, when it comes to religion, people make up their own stuff about what they believe all the time.
Yeah.
But, it is a bit different. I mean, the culture then, especially for weddings was, you did drink alcohol and you kind of had these gifts for things. And Jesus, I think in that story was in the parable was definitely fulfilling kind of, a Jewish tradition in that sense. Matthew, do you have anything to add on to that?
Yeah, it was funny because my church went through that same kind of dichotomy too. Now, when we had the breaking of the bread ceremony, we actually broke pieces off of a loaf of bread and drank out of a communal cup. I'm surprised nobody got super sick, or they basically said, if you're feeling well, don't partake.
But Holy Spirit, just telling you.
Yeah, the Holy Spirit.
Yeah.
But we actually drank real wine. And the first time I had the communion or the breaking of the bread services that he called it, it shocked me that it was real wine. I was 15. And so I just took a sip and passed it on. But I was honestly a little surprised about it. But I remember I was a member of my church's softball team. And so after softball, we went to this place for Chicago hot dogs and that kind of stuff, right? And some of the other the league was not other churches, but other businesses or whatever, right? And they're like, oh, we're going to a bar. Do you guys want to come with us after the softball game? And one of the guys who I remember said, no, we're a church. We don't drink. And so it's I thought about that for a second. It's one of the things that got me thinking. It's like, wait a minute, we have wine in church at the breaking of the bread, but yet we don't have beer. And I know other Christians who, this got me thinking later on, that they drank all the time. And I'm like, why do we not drink? I don't get it. And it's one of that story in the Bible about Jesus making the wine was also one of the dichotomies that got me thinking. I'm like, what is going on with this? So yeah, that was a story that got me thinking.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And when they ran out, they made more.
And they said, why did you bring out the best stuff last?
Yeah. So
yeah,
it just befuddled me. And that was just a comment, I guess.
Yeah, no, it's an interesting thing to point out for sure. I think, obviously most Christians are concerned about drunkenness and stuff. And the Bible definitely talks a lot about,
but when they ran out, they made more.
Yeah, no, for sure. Like
not only
totally
more, but good stuff.
Yeah. It's again, it is a different kind of drink than what we talk about today, but there is a cultural significance to that story. And Matthew actually just brought it up here, where they're talking about the wineskins themselves. They said you brought the best stuff first, because the idea was if you had these wineskins that are carrying this stuff, they would eventually, not work as well over time as you keep reusing them. And so you would want to put the best stuff in first, because as they're breaking in time, then you get the not great stuff, because if the wine spills and it breaks open, then it's not as big of a deal. And so him kind of doing this miracle, the story was like, he's kind of telling a greater tale here. There was definitely a bit more context to this than what we would imagine today, because, we don't deal with the problem of wineskins and stuff. But see, it's one of those things where it's like, if you don't know, hey, Christians, you're right. You got to know the context of the Bible. If you're telling these stories. So, yeah, I agree with you. It does make sense. Christians should be okay with drinking alcohol, because Jesus did. But yeah,
Manuel, I love San Diego. I lived there for like 6 years. I love San Diego.
We're doing a weather report right now. Manuel, what's the weather in San Diego?
It is. I'll tell you what. It's 72 average. And about 62 is the low. So
my God.
It doesn't get cold.
So it's colder in Texas right now than in San Diego? That doesn't make any sense.
I rode motorcycle for 10 months out of the year when I was stationed in San Diego. I love San Diego.
Climate change, man. Climate change. I'm telling you.
And I have 2 motorcycles that I ride all the time. So
there we go. Well, Manuel, thanks for asking that question.
Have a good one, man.
Really
Take care.
Appreciate it. We'll see you next time. Fun stuff. Yeah, that's definitely something I thought about too. You can point out all kinds of little things like that, especially like the actions of Jesus and what we do now. I'm trying to think of some other examples, but I don't know. And the alcohol one is definitely one of them, right?
The dichotomy of the consumption of alcohol in the Bible versus other religious people who I knew who did occasionally drink beer and who did occasionally drink wine at home. They weren't out getting fucked up or anything like that. But I knew people who said, oh, well, that person drinks from time to time. And it's that snarky talking about people shit that I used to hear all the time when I was a Christian. So when it wasn't a fashion show on Sunday morning, they were talking about people behind their back.
Yeah. Listen, this, Austin has corrupted me. Let me tell you, I am so different from this little Christian boy upbringing. I have a vape pen now, guys. I'm admitting that right now. I have a vape pen. Okay, this.
Actually, today is my 10-year anniversary of quitting smoking. So.
Oh, great, good job. But yeah, this, I'm doing stuff here that I would have never guessed just in my upbringing, just because again, it's the judgment and stuff, right? I definitely probably drink now more than I ever did back in Waco. Silas, the producer, just did a gigantic puff in front of me. I wish you guys could have seen that. That was really amazing. But yeah, it's this is what happens. It's his fault, by the way. It's Silas's fault. He probably vapes here more than anybody. But
I used to get shit for smoking. I remember elders of the church, they knew I was a smoker. They're like, oh, you need to quit smoking. That's bad for you. I'm like, really? Half the people here smoke.
Yeah, that's another thing. Oh, the smoking stuff is a
This
bit
was so
difficult.
80s too. This was all in the
Yeah.
80s too, and we're like we could still smoke in bars in Chicago,
Oh yeah.
and so it's like you could smoke anywhere in the 80s in Chicago area.
Yeah, that's that was before my time. I wouldn't know.